All right. This is a perfect example of why you mic test because I'd been going for about 7 minutes before I realized that my microphone was out. I've been doing this for a month and I still make typical mistakes. That's great. Wonderful. I guess I haven't been doing this long enough. So, uh, what I was doing the whole previous bit, I wanted to address how awesome this has been for my life. So I haven't had a ton of heavy structure outside of after I graduated from school a few years back, right? So after I got out of school, I I haven't had a lot of structure in my life, like regimented structure that I've chosen into, other than like a working thing. But I haven't had like some sort of structured hobby piece. Um, and that made it so that when I wasn't working, I would just kind of like sit on my couch and just couch potato. So what this has done is it's gotten me doing all of the things that I've used to that I used to love doing, and I still love doing them, which is awesome. But excuse me. The general setup of the things is this has given me a nice structure to build my hobbies around, which allows me to continue growing my hobbies. And so doing this has been wonderful and I love it. And I'll probably just keep doing this. How long? Who knows? Will the schedule change at some point? Well, it wouldn't be the first time. But I also found that the thematic weeks are wonderful. I love the thematic weeks. Ooh, that was nice. I love the thematic weeks because it gives me something to like work around for that week, you know, and that's really helpful because it makes it so it doesn't feel like I'm floundering. Because I have the constant force of me going, but I don't really have anywhere to direct that creativeness. So choosing a theme for a week really makes it so I can like hunker down and get that thing done. Last week was a ton of fun, terrifying. People have given me wonderful, nice feedback on the video, and we'll see if that keeps going or not. But that's probably going to happen again at some point. This week, the plan is to do D&D as a thematic. So this is going to be the general overview of me getting into D&D. And so to start, I'm going to have to, and I know that this is going to be a little meh for those who already know, but I'm going to have to describe what D&D is. All right, let's start from the top. D&D, also known as Dungeons and Dragons, is a TTRPG, tabletop role-playing game. What that means is you get a bunch of your friends together in a room, you all pretend to be something that you're not, and you take some dice and you roll it around to, verify as luck. And then you get some pluses and minuses depending on what you're playing. And then you pretty much do video game outside of video game. That's gonna that's gonna be the bare bones explanation that you get. Uh, I'll go into all the different benefits and whatnot probably in a later video, but that's the general idea of D&D. You get a bunch of your friends together, and just you just cosplay as something that you're not. You want to be a goblin that's 3 feet tall, or even better, three 1 foot goblins in a trench coat. That'll get you. But so so that's D&D. Uh Basically it's just a bunch of creative people if you're doing it right, and yes, there's a right way to do it, and that's the most fun for the people at the table. But if you're doing it right for the people at my table, you're trying to be as creative and wonky as possible, well, finding the most fun story method that would provide. It's a ton of fun. It works really well when you get a bunch of people who are really witty or just really know each other and all the inside jokes and whatnot. I recommend it, but it is a game that is you make or break it based off of the people you're playing with. So if you're playing with people who you don't really like jive with, it's not gonna work, man. So it also is highly, highly dependent on either the players or the dungeon master. So if you're new to it, you're going to want a really experienced dungeon master who knows what he's doing. And if you are an experienced player and want a new dungeon master, you get a few experienced players together and you can help facilitate a new dungeon master. That has worked several times. I've seen that happen a few different times around my table, which is great. But let's start getting into it now that you understand the game. Before I can talk about this for literal hours, so I gotta really focus here. Get ready for the tangents; they're gonna be wild. Alrighty. I officially started D&D. Before I get in this, I'm going to check my mic real quick, just to make sure. Mic check accomplished. Into the thing. I officially started D&D when I started dungeon mastering when I was 11. And I think I started playing D&D, like, every so often when I was 8. So I started really young. Ooh. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by the piano. Is it loud enough? I have no clue. We'll just keep it as is. So I officially started playing D&D when I was 11. That's when I would say that the real true starting point is. Because that's when I got my first genuine feedback and we weren't just playing around, which is wonderful and terrible at the same time. It was, I'll put it this way. The people that I played with that day that I dungeon mastered for will never play with me again. It was so dreadfully awful that I don't know if they'll ever pick up the game ever again. It was bad, man. It was really bad. But the feedback that I got from it was excellent because, they were family members who I was playing with, my, like, uncle or whatever and aunts and whatnot. So I was playing with family members. And so they would give me legitimate advice, which was great. And a lot of that advice I adhere to this day, which is incredible because I failed that bad that the advice that they gave me was so fundamental to the game that it was necessary. I use it to this day, which is incredible. But I started when I was about 11. I've been doing role-playing games, like just play pretend, since I was like 4, right? Just forever. And so I took to this game like a duck takes to water after I actually, learned some of the structure for it. I've basically been the official dungeon master for... Ooh. Sorry, piano again. I became the official dungeon master or the unofficial official dungeon master for my family that I play around, where I'm at. Probably when I was like 13, I just kind of fell into the role and everyone, enjoyed playing every so often. I was doing that kind of thing when I was like 4 too, so it was probably before that. But Okay. As a dungeon master, your job is to facilitate the world that the players are playing in. Okay? And you try to, every so often, guide the players into some fun pieces. So, for example, it would be your players each have their individual player characters, right? And you play everything else. So, if a player walks into the bar, they say, I walk into the bar. And then you go through and you describe the bar and all of its bar patrons and the tender, all the things, right? So that's the, or, I swing at the goblin, then you describe how the swing connects and, what happens. That's the general setup. Rules can shift and change depending on how competent the DM is and how much leeway they give the players. So that's the general setup on facilitating the worlds. So my job is to make sure that I set the world up in a way that causes the players to walk in a particular fashion. And it would be something like, okay, cool, your players are good people, and to start getting them down the plot that you think that they're going to take, so, to build up to some big bad evil that they accomplish, they slay the dragon, whatnot, you would probably start it off with one of your players sees a mugger in the streets beating up somebody who seems to have somewhat nice robes. It's a little hard to tell because of the mud from the ground. It's totally covered them. You're not sure why they're doing it this out in the open, but something tells you that it's probably the heavy downpour of rain that's smattering everywhere. And so you give them something like that, right? Sorry, my whole demeanor changes when I'm doing different things. But the setup that I just gave, it leads the players into going off to defend the person who's getting beat up. Now what you can do is you can make the person who's beat up, he thanks them profusely, and then, they help him to his home, and then he gets there, asks for their names or their party name or whatnot. And the next session or the session after that, you have him come back in and he's some sort of noble. Or in the same session too, he can be like some sort of noble and he comes in and he has a job for the party, right? So that kind of thing is how you can lead your players into a particular place, right? So it's like, oh, this person needs help, they help that person gives quest. Very, very simple way to do it. I tend to help. I tend to be the dungeon master for the little dungeon masters that pop up around my thing. One of my players has recently become a dungeon master, and so he's DMing his own party. And every so often he comes to me and he's like, "Dude, I have no clue what to do. How do I get them to do the thing?" And I'm like, "All right, what do you want?" He tells me. "What kind of party do you have?" He tells me. "Here's how this is going to break down," right? So I like to play around with that kind of thing, and I started a while ago. Now, what the main piece of this is going to be is probably this week is going to focus on an introduction to a world that I have been building for 7 years. It was about half a year of actual building at the start, and then 6 years of gameplay. Now, that's not solid gameplay all the way through. We've only had about 20, 30 sessions in it. Just because, time is hard to actually schedule with all of the pieces. So we've had about 20 to 30 sessions in it, and boy, has it been wild. So I could probably do a whole week recounting all of the stories of the things that we've been doing. And that's not what this week is going to be. This week we're going to be talking about the world that I've created. Ironically enough, I am terrible at names. I love building worlds, and I struggle a ton with names, so I still have to finish on the naming of it. But the name that I have for it right now is The Lands, right? And part of the reason for that is because I built it however long ago, and it was in a feverish. So COVID had happened, right? And it was probably a little bit before COVID actually it was a bit before COVID that I was working on it, but COVID happened, and that's when I had the biggest boom in creating it. And I had about 5 straight days of working on this thing with pretty much no sleep. Right? Just 0 sleep, 5 days, just work on the thing. So it got a little expansive, and that probably tells you a little bit more about me and how I build stuff. But the general setup that I have for it, I can go through and we can explore the different areas that I've built together across a long period of time, and I'm thinking it's going to be a fun little format, like some sort of journalistic narration format. And that's the plan for what this week is. This has been a little bit all over the place, but so is my experience with D&D. So, yeah,